Welcome to my budget deck channel where I try to make decks cheap and yet still playable. Today I had a look at the Dragon Maiden and I feel like I'm holding a presentation at school, but this deck in general is it's quite fun, but there's a massive but, not only to the Dragon Maidens but also to the deck itself, which is you need kind of a lot of extra deck cards, you need kind of a lot of ultra rare cards actually to make this deck competitively viable. I found a way to play this deck though. It's still viable on a ranked ladder, at least to like lowest platinum. After that you'll probably struggle unless you're like extremely lucky with the matchups. But this version of the deck is using the least amount of super rares and ultra rares possible, while still maintaining the playstyle of Dragon Maiden, maybe going for a more pure variant, and also still actually functioning as a deck that can be played semi-competitive in a master duel ranked kind of sense. Obviously you wouldn't be taking this to any real-life competition, but real-life budget decks are a completely different street anyway. So starting off with one specific card in this list that I've not seen run that much, but it actually makes kind of sense, and hear me out. This card can be used to fusion summon at least your House Dragonmaid, which is quite nice. And also it can be dumped to the graveyard by Laundry Dragonmaid by chance. So this card in the graveyard already has its use. Plus, it's quite neat because it can actually search you out with its effect, Chamber Dragonmaid. So I felt like including one Omni Dragon Rotar was quite a neat choice, especially since we are not using Hieratic Seal of the Heavenly Spheres. The reason why is because it's ultra rare, and obviously we want to try to use as little ultra rares as possible, which alters the whole deck's playstyle quite a bit, because this card is quite a big playmaker of usual Dragonmaid decks, but without it, cards like Noctovision Dragon, for example, make less sense, and also other combos aren't as good. In particular, for example, the whole going into Pisty, then with Polar Dragonmaid, then send Tidying to the graveyard, revive Polar Dragonmaid, and then go into Spheres, for example. It's all not as good. Also, Dragonmaid Hospitality is mainly, when I at least tried it out, mainly was used to go into the Spheres in the end. So I feel like that made it possible to bump Hospitality down to 1. Hospitality, don't get me wrong, is still a great card, and you probably should play it at 3 if you can. But I feel like it works at 1 in the specific variant of the deck. Another card that I think is probably the better option, Pot of Extravagance, but there's a massive reason why this card is not being played in here, because you would have to be running 3 of the Fusion Dragonmaids each, and that is not budget in the slightest. You want to be running at least 1 of each. If you have it, if you really have it, you would want to run 2 of each, because if one of them gets lost on the way, gets banished or whatnot, then you lose out on quite a big chunk of your actual playstyle. So having these at 2 each would be better, but they do work at 1 each. So that just towards this. Then we run basically every low rarity Dragonmaid at 3, just for the names, just for the numbers. Because you don't have that much of a hand trap lineup and you can't stall the game for as long, so you kind of want to have the Dragonmaids or the low level dragons, so you can actually use stuff like Tidying, use stuff like Dragonmaid Downtime, for example. And the cards themselves, they aren't too bad. Nurse Dragonmaid sadly needs a bit of a setup, so drawing this card first is kind of annoying actually, but you can still somehow make use of it. It's not too bad. Also, kind of annoying that I can only summon the level 7 dragon. That's why I run that at 2. Also because you run so many low level dragon mates, so you can make use of the quick effect of Earnest. Can be quite nice, not always great, but it's not terrible. Laundry Dragonmaid, I know nobody really likes this card, and I understand why, but hear me out. First of all, it can dump stuff like Brotor, Tidying, if you're lucky, to the graveyard, maybe the Fusion even, so it can come in handy, maybe some of the big dragons. That's its supposed use. Yeah, it's a good name. It can go into a rank 2 if need be, with together with Nurse Dragonmaid. You could go into the Phantom Knights card, or any other kind of actually good rank 2 if you happen to have it. Other than that, can't say much about Laundry Dragonmaid. It's in here for the names, not for much else. one Ash Blossom because you don't have to craft it if you open these master packs at the start. If you don't, then you probably wasted a kind of amount of your actual gems. I would definitely suggest you get that special pack with Ash Blossom and Lightning Storm and Solemn Judgment, so I don't count these towards the actual count of the ultra rares, because, well, most players will already have this card without having to craft it at least at 1. Kitchen Dragonmaid at 1, it's the one where you could run it at 2, but that'd be another super rare, but you don't really have to. It adds to the deck, but it doesn't super add to the deck. It's not as important as, for example, Chamber Dragonmaid is, which you could debate you want to run 3 of. 2 is fine. I feel like it doesn't come up too much that only run 2, but you kind of would run 3 and swap out Laundry Dragonmaids for like maybe one more Kitchen and definitely one more Chamber if you can. So keep that in mind. Triple Polar Dragonmaid, it's a fusion searcher basically. It gets tiding to the graveyard if you want to do some combos during your turn. Can help you send your big dragons to the graveyard as well. So this card in general is quite nice. Chamber Dragonmaid searches your fusion, searches your tidying, and also can go for hospitality and downtime, which in some occasions downtime is actually a quite nice card. I've got one replay, stay tuned for that, where downtime actually came in quite handy, especially against decks that also are not the quickest to get rolling, and also want to be putting up a grind game. Downtime can actually help you go through your deck a lot quicker and get to cards that you really need. To Earnest, because it's the only level 7 dragon. The other Dragonmaid level 7, I wasn't convinced with the effect. I tried it out a few times, I felt like it did nothing, and I felt Earnest actually came in handy sometimes because you can summon your Dragonmaids from hand during your opponent's turn. Since its effect is a quick effect, can be neat if you run so many names. Could bump it down to 1 if you want to, but I felt like a 2 it was actually quite neat. 1 Kaiju, the obligatory Kaiju that I run whenever I run stuff like Prosperity in budget decks, because there's times where you really need one, because you can't get over what your opponent put up. Chaos Max Dragon, if you don't happen to have Tinkek in your hand, then it's really hard to actually get over these kind of cards. Crooked Cook, for example, is another kind of thing. There's quite a lot around that you would want to use a Kaiju against, and being able to at least possibly find it with Prosperity is a thing that justifies in my means to run 1 Kaiju at 1. If you don't want to, you can swap in any other good stuff card that would be good at stalling, breaking boards, or any other kind of card. 1 Tinkek, the attack boost is quite nice, and being able to get it back to your hand from your graveyard after you got it out in the battle phase, then put it back into your hand with changeover, can be quite neat as well to keep up kind of a battle presence, to be able to run over cards of your opponent that have more than 3,500 attack points. So this card is definitely a one-off. Lore Power, you could also run 2 Tinkek. I feel the card can come in handy with the whole target 1 face-up monster and cannot activate its effects this turn. It's neat, but you don't necessarily need it. If you want to run 2 Tinkek, it's fine. Also, you run it for the attribute for stuff like hospitality. Yeah, that's basically the reason why this card is in here. 1 Monster Reborn, because getting stuff back can be quite nice. Also, sometimes getting stuff from your opponent's graveyard is also an option if you really need a big beat stick to finish the game, or if they even dumped some kind of negate or you got rid of one of their negate monsters. Getting that back is never too bad either. Plus, it triggers the effects of your Dragonmaids, and if you lose a fusion, you can get it back to the field with this. 1 Hospitality, would run 2 or 3 if I could, but since I'm trying to keep it mostly budget, this card at 1 is fine. Sets up some plays, gets a lot of stuff going, but you also need a card in hand or graveyard. And if you don't, would be problematic, but most of the time you will have one. So yeah, that's quite kind of a hard problem to have, not to be able to summon any Dragonmaid monster, especially if you run a lineup like this. But like I said, I wanted to say budget, so the card is at 1. Double changeover, I tried triple, felt double worked out better because you don't really want to draw 2 of these, and yeah, in the end, sometimes fusion summoning isn't the answer to all of your problems, so being able to search it with multiple effects should still be fine. Could bump it up to 3 if you want to, but you don't have to. Lightning Storm, just a very good to go second card, especially because this deck struggles a bit against back row decks. So Lightning Storm is great. Also, if you have it, Harpy's Feather Duster could be a thing depending on what you run into on the ladder. You might want to consider putting one of these cards in. Prosperity, because Extravagance is not in the cards for this deck. So I felt like Prosperity was the next best card to actually get to your play starters or to get to the cards that you want to see. And it does its job quite well, since you basically only need 2 cards in your extra deck and the rest is just filler or in case kind of cards. Only card that you sometimes might need is Pisty, but even then you can't even use it to link climb or anything because you cannot special summon monsters except dragon monsters. You could go for Striker Dragon, which would fulfill the same kind of purpose, being a link 1. It's a super rare though, so I did not want to include this. World Legacy Guard Dragon, card that revives any of your low level dragon maids, triggers the effect, can be quite nice extender, recovery card. It's not too bad. Forbidden Chalice, good go first card, good go second card, can save your turn if you're lucky, helps you against certain kind of cards like VFD as well, if that comes up a lot actually on the ladder. Torrential Tribute, a card very good, especially in this deck, and I know I say this with a lot of budget decks, especially the ones that are a bit control-y, but Torrential Tribute is a game ender, and in a deck where you try to basically get your cards back to your hand will leave you with an empty board a lot of the time, so being able to nuke the board afterwards and making your opponent not be able to finish you is kind of crucial. What you could play instead is Evenly Matched if you want to, if you have it. Also a great card. Didn't want to include it for obvious reasons. One Guard Dragon Cataclysm, good against back row decks actually. Really wanted to include it since Tidying also gets rid of a monster on your board. I didn't want to stock up too many of those because then a lot of the time you wouldn't have a dragon to actually tribute, which could be problematic. Plus you lose resources, and the card also has another downside. You have to destroy 2 targets on the field. Even if your opponent only has 1 card, then a lot of the time you can't use it unless you blow up another card of yours, which is not optimal. So this card really only good against back row heavy decks, where if you go first, set it, blow up the back row in the end phase, and yeah, keep on comboing from there. Tidying, very good card. Disruptive, revives cards from your graveyard. In general, just a neat card. Solemn Judgment, very good card going first. Can save your back row against stuff like Lightning Storm or Heavy Storm. Harpy's Feather Duster, I keep forgetting the name because this card has not been around for that long actually. And one Dragonmaid Downtime. It's neat, it's not great, but sometimes helps you dodge out of certain things, but it leaves you wide open. So in combination with stuff like Torrential Tribute, it can be fine, but you have to really watch when you actually use it, because you do not disrupt your opponent, then you get a card to your hand, but you might be dead. So use cautiously, maybe swap it out for a card that you actually would rather want to run. Now for other cards you could run, obviously Hand Traps are nice, Maxi can be nice, Triple Ash Blossom great, Called by the Grave is neat, but I feel like this deck doesn't necessarily die to Hand Traps. Ash Blossom isn't great, so if you want to run Crossout Designator, you could do that as well. If you want to add an ultra rare though, definitely go for Erratic Seal, makes the deck a lot better. You have to restructure it a bit, but it does actually add quite a lot to the deck. Could run Red Eye's Darkest Metal Dragon in combination with the small level 1 Red Eyes card that if you link it away, then you can search this card. Also helps you extend and go into stuff like Erratic Seal, so I feel like it's not necessarily needed in this kind of deck. Twin Twister, a good card, especially against back row kind of decks, and Ice Dragon's Prison can help against a lot of decks these days, especially against stuff like Eldritch. Getting rid of their Golden Lords can be quite crucial for actually winning the game. And for the extra deck, one House Dragonmaid, one Dragonmaid I don't want to mispronounce that, but I already have. And the rest of the cards are basically just filler cards, some rank 3s, some rank 2s, some rank 4s that you could play, some rank 7s or rank 8s even, but none of them are like necessarily very good. Could run any kind of linked monsters as well if you want to. These cards are just the free ones that you get at the start. I don't even know if you really have a way of going into Ningirsu in this kind of deck, but yeah, put in it as much as you want, it's mainly going to get banished by prosperity anyway. And that is that. Hope you enjoyed my rundown of my kind of version of Dragon Maids. It's fairly competitive for gold ladder actually. You'll win some games, you'll lose some games, but you might have a ton of fun doing so.